The day my family sat down to sell my grandmother's house out from under her, they came with a buyer, a cashier's check, and a closing date circled in red. What they never thought to bring, what it did not once occur to them to check, was the only thing I have spent my entire adult life protecting. The record. My name is Tess Lindgren. I am 34 years old, and I am an archivist. I preserve documents for a living. Letters, deeds, ledgers, the brittle paper that families are certain no one will ever ask about again. I spend my days in cotton gloves under cool light, deciding quietly what survives and what is lost forever. So when two strangers stood on my grandmother's porch and held out a sealed folder with her name looping across the flap in her own blue ink, I understood something my mother and my brother still do not understand to this day. A house can be taken in an afternoon, but a record made correctly, signed in a sound mind, and filed where it belongs, outlives every single person who tries to bury it. My grandmother, Hazel, turned 81 on a Thursday in October. She iced her own carrot cake, cream cheese frosting, walnuts she had shelled herself at the kitchen table. She set out her mother's good plates for 6. Nobody came. My parents were up at my brother's lake place in Brainerd. My brother sent a text at 5:40 in the evening, HBD Gran, crazy week, call you Sunday. My father did not text at all. My mother posted a photo of the lake at sunset to her Bridge Club thread with the single word, grateful. I drove the 90 minutes north out of the cities after the History Center closed and found her sitting alone at the table, the candles guttered down into the frosting. 81 of them. She had insisted on everyone. She looked up at me like she was working to place my face. Did the church group already leave? She asked. It's your birthday, Gran, I said. I'm here. We ate cake with our hands because neither of us felt like washing forks. I sang to her twice because halfway through the first time she touched my wrist and asked me to start again. At 9 o'clock, I helped her to bed. She weighed almost nothing. Her wrist was the width of a cardboard tube. As I pulled the quilt to her chin, her hand closed on mine, and her eyes went suddenly clear, the way a radio sometimes catches a clean signal out of static. They think I don't notice, she whispered. I waited for more. She was already asleep, and the next morning, while I was drying her mother's good plates, 2 strangers knocked on the door and handed me the folder that ended my family as I had known it. Welcome back to Suspense Calm Stories, where the quietest person in the room is usually the one holding the truth, and the people who underestimate her always find out too late. Before I tell you what was sealed inside that folder, and how a woman who could not always name the day of the week had outmaneuvered her own son, his wife, and a cash buyer 11 months before any of them made a move, do me one small favor. Tell me what time it is where you are and the city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels before you decide whether what I did was cold or simply long overdue. I should tell you who I am in this family because it explains everything that came after. The Lindgrens are a particular kind of comfortable. We are from Stillwater, Minnesota, the old river town on the bluffs above the St. Croix, where the lumber money built limestone houses 120 years ago, and the descendants of that money still set the table for the Historical Society galas. My father, Roger, sold commercial insurance until he could spend his Tuesdays golfing in Scottsdale and call it semi-retirement. My mother, Cynthia, chaired committees, the Garden Club, the Riverfront Preservation Board, the Silent Auction Subcommittee at St. Anselm's. My brother, Derek, ran a development company, Lindgren Build Group, that put up townhomes and flipped like cabins. And he drove a black German SUV that cost more than I make in a year and a half. And then there was me, the one who works at the museum. That is how my mother said it. Tess works at the museum, with a soft little laugh, as though I sorted gift shop postcards. What I actually do is run the special collections at the Quah Valley History Center. I authenticate documents. I establish provenance, the chain of who held a paper, and when, and how we know it is what it claims to be. I date inks and papers. I build the finding aids that let a stranger in 50 years walk in and locate the exact letter they need. I make $71,000 a year, and I have never once in my life been late returning anything I borrowed. My family called me careful, the way you'd call a child slow. I let them. People who think you are harmless tell you everything, but this house, my grandmother's house, the limestone one at the end of Cutler Bluff, with the river coming up green through the oaks. This house was mine in every way that mattered, and no way that counted. I learned to read at that kitchen table. Hazel taught me. She was the Register of Deeds for Washington County for 38 years, and she did not believe in talking down to a child. By the time I was 8, she had me alphabetizing her recipe box and writing the date on the back of every photograph in pencil, light, so it wouldn't bleed through. Write it down so the next one can find it, she'd say. Memory fades, Tess. The record keeps. She was the one who drove me to my first day at the History Center. She co-signed my first apartment lease when my parents decided it would build character to let me figure it out alone. Everything I am because a woman spent 38 years watching families try to do exactly what my family was about to try. And she taught me how the paper works. I slept in the back bedroom that night, the one with the water stain on the ceiling shaped like Lake Superior that I'd been staring at since I was 6. Around midnight, I went down for a glass of water, and on the hall shelf, tucked behind the framed photo of all of us at my college graduation, I found a business card. Sherry Dunmore, and Pratt Realty. On the back, in handwriting that was not my grandmother's, comp $740K, clean lot, river view, quick close, very doable. I put the card back exactly where it had been. My hands were steady. My stomach was not. The next morning, Friday, I told myself I was being paranoid right up until I carried the recycling out to the alley and found the lockbox. It was a realtor's combination lockbox, the gray kind, clamped to the iron railing of the back steps, just out of sight of the street. I have walked past 1,000 of them on 1,000 listings. Somebody had been showing this house. Somebody had been bringing strangers through my grandmother's kitchen while she sat in the next room doing her crossword in pen, always pen, because she said pencils were for people who didn't trust themselves. I went back inside, and I did the thing I do. I went to the record. Hazel's mail had piled 3 weeks deep on the hall table, unsorted, which by itself told me how far things had slipped. Between a water bill and a flyer for snow tires, I found a listing sheet on Dunmore and Pratt letterhead, marked off-market. 5 bedrooms, original woodwork, bluff lot, listed at $740,000. And I knew the neighborhood comps cold because I'd valued half these houses for the historical survey, $70,000 under what the lot alone would bring at auction. In the kitchen junk drawer, under the rubber bands and the dead batteries, I found the rest of it. A purchase agreement, unsigned but filled in. Buyer, Bluffline Partners, LLC, cash, 30-day close. The seller's signature line was blank, but someone had penciled H. Lindgren beneath it in neat block capitals, the way you'd rehearse a thing before you did it for real. The listing agent was Sherry Dunmore, and the seller's representative, typed in clean on the line that should have terrified them, was Derek Lindgren, brother. I sat down on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet my grandmother had painted apple green in 1979, and I laid the pages out around me like I was processing an accession. The card, the lockbox combination written on a sticky note in my mother's hand, the listing, the agreement, a second sticky note, also my mother's, Target Close Nov 14. That was 19 days away. I called my mother that evening at 6. "Oh, Tess, Cynthia has a voice she uses on parish volunteers and people she's about to disappoint, warm, bright, already managing you. How is Gran? We had the most restful weekend. The lake was like glass." "There's a lockbox on her back railing," I said. 2 seconds of silence. 3. "Sweetheart, that's being handled. Your father and Derek have been working with a wonderful agent on a transition plan for Gran. You've seen her. She can't keep up a house this size. She left the burner on twice last month. There's a signed purchase agreement in her junk drawer with Derek's name on it as the seller's rep. That is a family decision." The warmth dropped 1 full register. "Between your father, your brother, and me, we have been managing your grandmother's affairs for months. And frankly, Tess, you have not been here for the hard parts. You don't need to worry about the details. She doesn't know the house is being sold. She knows what she needs to know." A pause, and I heard the clink of a wine glass set down. "Derek is in a difficult stretch with the business. This house could fund a beautiful memory care suite for Gran and give your brother room to get back on his feet. It is the responsible thing. It's her house, Mom. Tess." All the way to the floor now, cold and final. "Your grandmother has dementia. She cannot make decisions about a $700,000 asset. She won't even remember the house by Christmas." The line hummed between us. "Then it's a good thing," I said, "that she wrote it all down." I hung up before she could ask what that meant. I didn't fully know yet myself, but I'd spent 15 years learning that the loudest person in a dispute is almost never the one holding the document. And somewhere in this house, sealed with my grandmother's signature across the flap, was a folder a stranger had told me to open when they came for the house. They had come for the house. So that night, I opened it. The 2 people who'd knocked that morning were named Ada Whitfield and Caleb Ortiz. She was about 60, silver hair cut blunt at the jaw, a wool coat, and a worn leather briefcase. He was younger, maybe 40, carrying a notary seal in a zippered pouch. She had handed me the folder on the porch, thick, maybe 40 pages, sealed with a paper flap, my grandmother's name across the tab in blue ink, and said, "Your grandmother retained my firm 11 months ago. She asked us to deliver this to you, personally, when the time came." She'd pressed her card into my hand. "Come see me when you're ready. And Tess, don't discuss this with your parents before we talk." Then they were in their car and gone before I could form a second question. The seal across the flap was signed in Hazel's hand. I knew that signature the way I know my own name, the capital H with the long crossbar that swept back under the whole word, the way she looped the final N. This was not a shaking mark. This was written by a woman who knew precisely what she was putting her name to. I broke the seal. Inside was a stack of instruments I recognized from 1,000 archive boxes. A recorded deed, a trust agreement, a durable power of attorney, notarized witness pages, a physician's letter on clinic letterhead dated 11 months back, and clipped to the front, a note on my grandmother's personal stationery, the cream paper with her initials at the top, the same deliberate blue ink. "Tess, when they come for the house, open this. Everything you need is here. You were always the one who reads to the bottom of the page. I'm sorry it has to be you. It could only ever be you. Gran, I read it 3 times. Each time, when they come for the house, landed harder. Not if. When. 11 months ago, before the forgetting got bad, before she started calling me by my mother's name, before the morning she got lost driving to the post office she'd driven to for 50 years. She had known someone would come, and she had prepared. I am trained not to read a collection in the order it falls out of the box. I read it in the order that establishes the chain. So I started with the recorded deed. The house at 9 Cutler Bluff had been transferred 11 months ago into the Hazel M. Lindgren Revocable Living Trust. Recorded. Stamped by the Washington County Recorder. Indexed in the grantor grantee books, and I actually laughed out loud, alone in that kitchen, because of course she'd recorded it herself. She'd run that office for 38 years. She knew that a deed sitting in a drawer is a wish, and a deed recorded in the public index is a fact that does not go away when one old woman's memory does. Then the trust, the house, the title, everything conveyed into the trust. Hazel was the trustee while she had capacity. The successor trustee, named in plain type on page 4, was me. Not my father, not Derek, me. If Hazel became incapacitated, legal control of the house, the sole authority to sell it, encumber it, do anything with it, passed to me. Then the durable power of attorney, naming me as her agent for finance and healthcare both, with the durability clause that meant it did not expire when she got sick. It activated, then the physician's letter. Dr. Priya Naik, neurologist, had examined Hazel on the same day she signed everything, and documented in clinical language that my grandmother understood the nature and consequences of what she was doing, that she was oriented to time, place, and person, that she identified her assets accurately and stated clear preferences for them. And then, the thing the folder held that I did not expect, the thing I would later learn the law calls belt and suspenders, and I call my grandmother being smarter than all of them. A small USB drive in a paper sleeve, labeled in her hand. In case they say I didn't know what I was doing, I drove to Ada Whitfield's office the next morning. It was on the 2nd floor of a brick building on Main Street, 3 blocks from the courthouse, where my grandmother had filed other people's records for most of a lifetime. Ada met me with a pot of coffee and a box of tissues she set, without a word, on the table exactly between us. Your grandmother came to me 11 months ago, she said. She'd had an episode, got disoriented driving, ended up out past Bayport, couldn't find her way home. A sheriff's deputy brought her back. She called my office the next morning, and she was, that day, completely sharp. She said, and I wrote it down because it stayed with me. I have spent 38 years watching children take their parents' houses with a pen. I know exactly how it's done. I want you to make it impossible to do to me. Ada folded her hands. She told me her son would do whatever his wife told him, and his wife would sell the house the day Hazel couldn't stop her. She wanted it stopped before she couldn't stop it herself. And she chose you, specifically. She said you were the only one who'd fight for the house, because you were the only one who understood that it was never about the money. She turned the laptop toward me and played the drive. There was my grandmother, 11 months younger, in her good blue cardigan and her pearl earrings, sitting in this same conference room. The date and time were on the screen. Ada's voice, off camera, asked her to state her name, the date, where she was, what she owned, and what she wanted to do. And my grandmother, clear-eyed, dry, a little impatient the way she got when people made her say the obvious, looked into the camera and said, "My name is Hazel Marie Lindgren. I am putting my house into a trust, and I am naming my granddaughter Tess as the one who decides, because she's the only one of them who never once asked me what the place was worth. The rest of them will tell you I was confused. Look at the date. Look at my eyes. I am not confused today. I am furious, and I am exact." I had to put the coffee down. "She wanted the video," Ada said gently, "because she said a letter can be called a forgery, and a memory can be called wishful. But a woman looking at the camera, on a date, naming what she knows, that's harder to argue with in a courtroom." She really did understand how this works. She understood better than I do, I said. "So," Ada said, "the house is not your grandmother's to sell anymore, and it is certainly not your father's or your brother's. It belongs to the trust. The only person on earth who can authorize a sale is the trustee, and the moment a physician confirms Hazel lacks capacity, that trustee is you." She paused. "Tess, I have to ask, has your family had her sign anything recently? A power of attorney, a listing, anything?" I thought of the block-printed H. Lindgren under the seller's line. "I think they've had her sign a lot of things," I said. "I went home, and I found what they'd had her sign. It took me 2 hours, and it was in the worst possible place, the bottom drawer of the credenza, under a stack of old church bulletins, where they clearly assumed no one would ever look, because no one in that family ever looked at the bottom of anything. A power of attorney, dated September the 3rd, barely 7 weeks earlier. It named my father, Roger Lindgren, as Hazel's agent for all financial and property matters. Stapled behind it, a listing authorization, same date, granting Derek the right to act as seller's representative. I carried both to the kitchen table and laid them beside the originals from the folder. And I did the only thing my training makes automatic. I compared the hands, the trust documents from 11 months ago. Firm pressure, the loops clean and closed, the long crossbar on the H sweeping confidently back under the name, every letter linked to the next. The hand of the woman who'd written grocery lists in cursive and signed my permission slips with a fountain pen. The September power of attorney, the letters barely rising off the baseline, the loops collapsed into flat scribble, the pen lifting between strokes where there should have been flow, the crossbar a faint wandering thing that didn't reach. This was not the hand of a woman who understood what she was signing. This was the hand of a woman whose hand was being guided to the line and told where to press. I am not a forensic document examiner. That is a different specialty, and I would never claim it. But I have held 40,000 signatures in my career, and I know what a confident hand looks like and what a frightened one looks like, and more than that, I know how to corroborate. So I checked the date against the record, because the record is the thing my family always forgets exists. September the 3rd. I went back to the mail pile and found the discharge summary I'd ignored a month earlier. When my mother had texted me, a breezy little gran took a spill. Nothing serious, she's resting. It was from Lakeview Hospital. Date of admission, September the 2nd. Date of discharge, September the 4th. Under clinical notes, patient disoriented, intermittent confusion, unable to reliably state date or location. Recommend outpatient neurological follow-up. They had walked a power of attorney into a hospital room and put a pen in the hand of a woman the hospital itself had written down as unable to state what day it was. I photographed everything, front and back, in the flat, even light by the window, the way I'd shoot an accession, ruler in frame, date card in the corner. Then I called Ada. They had her sign a POA on September 3rd, I said, naming my father. She was admitted to Lakeview on the 2nd and discharged on the 4th, confused per the chart. There was a short silence, the satisfied kind. Then it isn't worth the paper, Ada said. But Tess, even if she'd signed it lucid on a mountaintop, it wouldn't matter. A power of attorney lets the agent act for the person. It does not give the agent authority over assets the person already moved into a trust 11 months earlier. They built their whole plan on top of a deed that was already gone. They've been trying to sell a house your grandmother doesn't legally own as an individual anymore. She let that settle. Now, we need a current evaluation confirming she lacks capacity today to formally void the September document and to confirm your authority as trustee has activated. I'll arrange it with Dr. Nake. Call her office Monday and put yourself on the schedule as the healthcare agent. I called Monday morning. They put me on hold for 11 minutes. When the receptionist came back, her voice had gone careful and rehearsed, the tone of someone reading from a sticky note a manager left. I'm sorry, Ms. Lindgren, but there's a restriction on Mrs. Lindgren's records. We can only release information to the designated family contact. Who is the designated contact? A pause. I'm not able to say. Try. A longer pause. Roger Lindgren. They had locked me out of her medical file. I sat in the clinic parking lot with my forehead on the steering wheel and did the math. The restriction had gone on 6 weeks earlier, mid-September, right after the hospital, right after the coerced POA. They hadn't just gotten a signature. They'd built a wall around her so no one could check. I called Ada from the lot. They've restricted her records to my father. Expected, she said, unbothered. Your durable POA names you healthcare agent and predates theirs by 10 months. Theirs is void, yours is valid. The clinic is legally required to honor the earlier durable instrument. I'll file the authorization today. You'll have the records this week, and Dr. Nake will do the evaluation. 3 days later, I had the file, and Dr. Nake confirmed in a fresh evaluation what was already true. The system was slower than my anger, but it worked. If a story like this is hitting somewhere close to home, if you have ever watched a family decide an old person's worth came with an expiration date, type the word she knew in the comments so I know you're with her. And subscribe to Suspense Stories, because what happened at the closing table is the part I still can't quite believe I lived through. My brother came by on a Wednesday. He didn't knock. Derek has never knocked anywhere in his life. He came in jingling his keys with his smile already on. The way he enters every room, as though the room ought to be grateful. Hey, Tessie. He kissed the top of my head and went straight to the refrigerator, helped himself to a sparkling water, and leaned against the counter like he held the deed. Good of you to come check on Gran. I'm staying for a while, I said. Yeah, he cracked the can. Taking some time off from the museum. He said museum the way you'd say someone's cute hobby. Derek, I said, I found the listing. The can stopped halfway to his mouth. 1 beat, 2, then the smile reset itself. Not gone, just relabeled, from charm to negotiation. Okay, look, I know it seems fast. Here's the situation. The business is tight right now. I've got a balloon payment due in 8 weeks, $810,000. If I miss it, the bank calls the whole line. 3 years of work, every project gone. He spread his hands like he was the reasonable one. Gran's sitting on a $700,000 asset she can't even use. We sell it. She gets a gorgeous memory care suite. Mom and Dad stop losing sleep. I keep my company. Everybody wins. Everybody except Gran. Gran doesn't know what day it is, Tess. She knows strangers are walking through her kitchen on Tuesdays. She told me. His jaw tightened and he set the can down and stepped in closer. using his size the way he'd used it since we were kids. "Don't make this hard. We're family. Family helps family." "Is that what you told her?" I said, "when you brought the papers to her hospital bed?" He went very still. Then the smile came back, but cold now, all teeth. "It's basically done already. The closing's set. You're a museum clerk, Tess. You don't have standing in any of this." He left the can sweating a ring onto her counter and walked out without rinsing it. He was wrong about exactly one thing, and it was the only thing that mattered. I had standing. I had it in writing, recorded, indexed, and on video. That evening I sat with Hazel in the front room while the river went silver outside the window. She was having a good hour, not a good day. Those were nearly gone, but a good hour. She had her crossword and her reading glasses down on her nose, filling squares in ballpoint. "You went to see Ada," she said, not looking up. I stopped in the doorway. "You remember Ada?" "I remember enough." She turned the pen in her fingers. "I remember I was scared, and I went down to a lawyer, and I told her exactly what Cynthia would do the minute I couldn't stop her. Did I get it right?" I sat on the arm of the couch. "You got it exactly right, Gran." "Good," she filled in a square. "They bring people through on Tuesdays when the aid's here. I hear the doors, strangers in my kitchen." She pressed her lips together. "Derek brought papers to the hospital. I signed because my arm hurt and I wanted them to leave. I don't remember what it said." "It doesn't matter what you signed in September," I said. "You already took care of all of it. A year ago, you made a record." Her hand found mine. The grip was thin, but it was deliberate. Her eyes came up clear, clear like creek water over stone. "Memory fades, Tess." It was the old line, the one she'd said to me 1,000 times across 40 years. "The record keeps. You make sure of it." "I will, Gran. I'm not gone yet." She said it fierce and quiet, and then she went back to her crossword, and by the time I'd made the tea she'd forgotten she said it. But I would remember it. I would remember it for both of us. Then came the part I should have expected, because Hazel had warned me about it on a video taped 11 months before. The story changed before I could tell it. My mother came on Thursday with no flowers and no food, none of the things you'd bring to visit your mother-in-law, and one glossy brochure, Maple Crest Memory Care. She spread it on the kitchen table. "It's a wonderful facility, Tess. Private rooms, a walking garden, music every afternoon. If we transition her before Thanksgiving, the house can be staged and listed by December." "You already have a buyer," I said. "You're staging it for Bluffline Partners." Something flickered across her face, just a flash, the briefest crack in the plaster, and then the warmth came back thicker. "Your brother is in real trouble. This family needs to pull together. By selling an 81-year-old woman's home out from under her while she does the crossword in the next room. After everything I have done for this family." Her voice caught real tears, or the kind she could turn on like a tap. After 34 years, I'd stopped being able to tell. "The papers are already with the title company, Tess. The closing is the 14th. This is happening." She left the brochure on the table and her perfume in the hall. I almost let it go that night. It would have been easier to file the petition Ada offered, let a judge handle it slow and quiet and far away from all of us, and never have to sit in a room and watch my mother's face. But Hazel hadn't told me to go to court. She'd handed me a folder and a video, and said, when they come for the house, "Open this." She wanted the documents in the room. She wanted them to find out the way she'd spent 38 years watching people find out across a counter, with the record on the table, where there is nothing left to argue. So I called Ada back, and we made a plan. And the plan was not loud. "You have two options. Ada said. 1. We petition the probate court now and block the sale before it can happen. Clean, but slow and public, and it gives them weeks to scramble, hire counsel, move your grandmother, muddy the dates. 2. She paused. We let them walk into the closing, and we walk in behind them with the recorded deed, the trust, the capacity evidence, and the video. The title company will do the rest. No title officer with a functioning brain ensures a title held in a trust the seller doesn't control. They won't close. It ends in that room in front of the buyer, the agent, and your family all at once. That's the quieter path. The documents speak. You don't have to. I thought about my grandmother looking into a camera and saying, I am not confused today. I am furious, and I am exact. We let the documents talk, I said. I gave myself 9 days, and I spent the first of them not on revenge, but on protection, because I'd learned the order from her. First, you protect the person. Then you make the record. Then you let the record do the work. On day 1, I filed a report with Adult Protective Services. I sat in my car outside the county building and called the state elder abuse line, and the intake worker was calm and exact and entirely unsurprised by any of it. An 81-year-old with documented dementia. A power of attorney signed during a hospitalization for confusion. An off-market sale priced $70,000 under value. A son profiting. A daughter-in-law directing. She'd heard the song before, only the names change. We'll assign an investigator, she said. You'll have a case number within 72 hours. There's a closing in 9 days, I said. Anything that moves it up. I'll flag it time sensitive. When I got home, there was a voicemail from Ada, and her voice had a curious note in it. Tess, something came up. APS told me off the record that yours isn't the first report on this house. There's an earlier one, anonymous, filed about 6 weeks ago, no contact information left, so they couldn't follow up. But the file exists. Someone else saw this happening, I don't know who, 6 weeks ago. Mid-September, right after the hospital, right after the September POA. Somebody else had seen and had cared enough to pick up the phone, but not enough to leave a name. I didn't know who, not then. On day 4, my father came alone. He pulled up in the old gray pickup he used for the dump and the hardware store, not the Audi he drove to church. The truck nobody would notice. He sat behind the wheel a long time before he got out. He came in through the back the way he'd come into that house since he was a boy, and at first he didn't look at me at all. He stood in the kitchen and looked at the green cabinets his mother had painted and the prism she'd hung over the sink that threw little rainbows across the floor every clear morning. She used to sing in this kitchen, he said, barely above a whisper. Sunday mornings, Patsy Cline. He sat down at the table and laid his hands flat on it, and I watched them shake. I know what you think of me, he said. I waited. I didn't want this, any of it. Derek's drowning. Your mother says the house is the only way out, and his voice went thin and cracked along a hairline. My mother wouldn't want Derek to lose everything. You could still stop it, Dad. He looked at me for 1 second, one awful, trembling second, and I saw the boy who'd grown up in that kitchen, who'd been carried to bed by the woman asleep in the next room. Then his phone buzzed on the table, face up. Cynthia. He looked at it. He stood up. I should go, he said. He left through the back door. He didn't say goodbye to his mother. I washed his coffee cup and put it away, and I did not yet understand what I just watched, though I would in that conference room 9 days out. On day 5, I bought a cake. A small one, vanilla with cream cheese frosting, 1 candle, because 81 seemed like a fire hazard, and because I wanted to make her laugh. I set it on the table at 3 in the afternoon and put out 2 forks and made tea. Whose birthday? She asked, shuffling in. Yours, I said. We're doing it over, properly this time. She sat. I lit the candle. She watched the flame the way you watch something you're trying to hold in your mind. Make a wish, Gran. She closed her eyes and blew it out on the first try. What did you wish? She looked at me with those clear creek eyes. That you'd stay. We ate with forks this time. She told me the green cabinets were Granny Smith green, like the apples, and that she'd painted them the summer my father started high school. Then she put her fork down and leaned across the table. Don't let them throw out my cabinet, she said. The oak card catalog cabinet in the front room, where she'd kept 40 years of her own private index. Every important paper in the family, cross-referenced in her own hand. Everything's in the cabinet, Tess. They'll want to haul it to the dump. Don't let them. I won't, Gran. The cabinet stays. On day 6, the phone calls started. My aunt, my father's cousin, called first, careful and concerned, to tell me my mother said I was trying to take control of Gran's money, that I was being, well, manipulative. Then a woman from the preservation board. Then Derek's accountant. Then a friend of my mother's from St. Anselm's who'd known Hazel 40 years. Same script every time, slight variations. Tess is overstepping. Tess is emotional. Tess doesn't understand the family's situation. Cynthia had shaped the story before I could open my mouth. I didn't answer it. I didn't post. I didn't plead. I didn't call anyone back. Ada had told me the documents speak, and I believed her. But on day 6, near 9 at night, the phone rang once more. Margit, Hazel's younger sister, 83, still sharp, still in Red Wing. Tess. Her voice was dry and clear, the family voice. I don't believe one word Cynthia is selling, and I'll tell you why. Your grandmother called me last fall, October maybe. She said she'd been to a lawyer and put the house where the right person could find it. She said, if anything happens, you back Tess. Tess reads to the bottom of the page, so whatever you need, you have me. And then she said the thing that made the hair stand up on my arms. She also told me she'd already called somebody to look into Derek's hands on her checkbook. Months back. Wouldn't say who she got to make the call. Said she didn't want it traced to her, because if it was her name, your father would just bury it. I sat very still in the dark kitchen. 6 weeks ago. An anonymous report. No name left, because the person was afraid of what would happen if it traced back. Not afraid of strangers. Afraid of his own wife. I thought of my father, sitting in the old gray truck in the driveway for a long time before he could make himself get out. On day 8, everything was confirmed. The closing was set for the 14th at 2 o'clock, Kruah Valley title, on Main, 2 blocks from the courthouse where my grandmother had recorded other people's deeds for 38 years. The escrow officer was a woman named Gail Brunner, 22 years in the business, and Ada's contact described her in 2 words. By the book. The buyer was Bluffline Partners, a firm that bought undervalued lots, put up condos, and moved on. Their representative was a man named Paul Henning. Sherry Dunmore would be there as the agent. My mother and brother would attend as the seller's side. My father would come because my mother told him to. And Ada learned one last thing that made her go quiet on the phone. Gail Brunner flagged this file 3 weeks ago, she said. During the title search, she found the property was held in a trust. She contacted Dunmore for clarification, and Dunmore sent over a signed statement claiming the trust had been dissolved and the house reconveyed to Hazel as an individual. Gail accepted it provisionally, but she noted in the file that she could find no recorded reconveyance deed. There it was. The wholesale was already standing on cracked ice. They told the title company the trust was gone. But a trust isn't gone because someone says so at a kitchen table. It's gone when a reconveyance deed is signed and recorded in the public index. And there was no such deed because the trust had never been dissolved. I knew it for certain because on day 9, I did the one thing my entire profession is built on, the thing not one of them ever thought to do. I went to the courthouse and I pulled the record myself. I stood at the same public terminal where, as a little girl, I'd watched my grandmother run her finger down the granddaughter index. I searched the index from the date she recorded the trust deed forward to that morning. The conveyance into the trust was there, stamped and indexed. And after it, nothing. No reconveyance, no transfer out. The trust still held the house, on the public record, indexed and permanent, exactly where Hazel Lindgren had put it, and exactly where she'd spent a career teaching the county that records belong. I printed a certified copy of the index page itself. Then, I printed a certified copy of the recorded deed. The clerk who stamped them was a woman who trained under my grandmother 30 years ago, and when she saw the name, she looked up at me and said, quietly, "Hazel taught me that the index never lies. Tell her Lorna says hello. Here is the thing people underestimate about paper. It does not get louder when you argue with it. It does not change its story to keep the peace. And it does not forget. If you have ever been the careful one, the quiet one, the one they talked over at every holiday table while you sat there knowing exactly where the truth was filed, then stay with me, because the next part is for you. Subscribe and come with me to the closing table." That night I sat with Hazel, and she was having a good hour. She filled in a crossword square 7 letters, kept account of the truth. She thought about it and wrote ledgers, and then she reached into the pocket of her cardigan and took out her old reading glasses case, the leather one with the brass clasp she'd carried my whole life. She opened it and handed me a folded paper. It was a note in her hand, shaky, but legible, recent. For Tess, who reads to the bottom of the page, the keeper of the record, below it a signature. Not the firm one from last year, not the broken one from September. Something in between, trembling but intentional, written by a woman at the very edge of the window, still reaching for the glass while it was open. "I'm not gone yet," she said. I folded it into my wallet, behind the photograph of the 2 of us at the History Center. And in the morning, the folder, the note, the certified index, the video, and I all went to the closing together. Kawa Valley title occupied a brick storefront with tinted glass and a brass handle polished to a mirror. I parked across the street at 1:45. Ada pulled in beside me. Caleb, the notary, was already inside. We walked in together, Ada with her briefcase, me with the manila folder my grandmother had sealed 11 months before. Conference room beheld an oval table, 10 chairs, a water pitcher, a printer humming in the corner. Gail Brunner was squaring documents into neat stacks at the head of the table. She glanced up when we came in, saw Ada, and paused half a second, the pause of someone recognizing a name from a file. "M.S. Whitfield. I don't have your firm on this transaction. I represent the Hazel M. Lindgren Revocable Living Trust," Ada said. "We have documents relevant to this closing." Gail Brunner's pen stopped moving. The door opened behind us. My mother came in first, cashmere and pearls, her smile already in position, the hostess arriving at her own party. Derek followed, jaw set, a leather portfolio under his arm. My father came last, gray-faced, eyes on the carpet. Behind them, Sherry Dunmore in kitten heels with a fan of closing documents in her hand. And last, Paul Henning, the buyer's man, navy suit, no expression. My mother saw me. She stopped. She looked at the folder in my hands and at Ada beside me, and her smile did not change, but the muscles underneath it did. "Tess, what are you doing here?" "Taking a seat," I said. I sat. Ada sat beside me. I set the folder square in front of me and I waited, and the room got very quiet, and even the printer seemed to stop. Gail Brunner looked at Ada. "You said you have documents." "I do." Ada opened her briefcase and laid them out one at a time, each squared to the table edge, the way you'd lay evidence in front of a judge. First, a certified copy of the recorded deed conveying 9 Cutler Bluff into the Hazel M. Lindgren Revocable Living Trust, recorded with the Washington County Recorder 11 months ago. She set down a second sheet beside it, and a certified copy of the grantor-grantee index, current as of yesterday morning, showing no reconveyance has ever been recorded. The trust still holds title. The successor trustee, she nodded at me, is Tess Lindgren. My mother's smile came down in stages, like a building losing floors. Second, a durable power of attorney naming M.S. Lindgren as agent, executed 11 months ago, witnessed and notarized, currently in effect. Derek leaned forward. We have a more recent power of attorney that. Third, Ada set down the clinical letter, and then a second one. A capacity evaluation by Dr. Priya Naik, dated the day the trust was executed, confirming Mrs. Lindgren fully understood what she was signing. And Dr. Naik's current evaluation, completed last week, confirming she lacks capacity now, which means any document signed after her decline, including the September power of attorney your family obtained, was signed without the legal capacity to make it binding. She paused. For the avoidance of any doubt, I have one more item. She turned the laptop around and pressed play. My grandmother's face filled the screen, 11 months younger, blue cardigan, pearl earrings, the date stamped in the corner. My name is Hazel Marie Lindgren. I am putting my house into a trust, and I am naming my granddaughter Tess as the one who decides. The rest of them will tell you I was confused. Look at the date. Look at my eyes. I am not confused today. I am furious, and I am exact. The room was so quiet I could hear the river 2 blocks down. Gail Brunner picked up the index page. She read it. She compared it to the title report in her own file. She looked up at Sherry Dunmore. M.S. Dunmore, you provided me a signed statement that this trust had been dissolved and the property reconveyed. Sherry Dunmore's face went the color of the paper in her hand. I was told that's what happened. By the family, there is no recorded reconveyance, Ada said. The deed stands, the trust holds title, the sale cannot proceed. Gail Brunner set the documents down, squared her shoulders, and said the 5 words that ended it. I cannot close this transaction. She turned to me, and there was something almost like respect in it. M.S. Lindgren, I'll be voiding this file and flagging the title. You'll have written confirmation by end of day. Then she looked at the rest of them level. I will not insure a title I know to be defective. No one in this office will record a deed we know is bad. That's not how this works. The silence held for 4 seconds. My mother broke it. This is absurd. Her voice climbed and she stood, palms flat on the table, pearls swinging. Tess works at a museum. She has no authority here. My husband is Hazel's son, her only child, and he holds a signed power of attorney. A power of attorney, Ada said, even as still water. Signed by a woman the hospital recorded as confused. During the same week she was admitted for confusion. A power of attorney with no capacity evaluation, no independent witness. And a power of attorney that, even if it were valid, grants no authority whatsoever over assets already held in a trust. Can't do this. Derek was on his feet now too, and his voice wasn't theatrical like our mother's. It was raw. I have $800,000 due in 8 weeks. If this falls through, Mr. Lindgren, Gail Brunner said, your financial obligations are not this office's concern. This is my grandmother's house. This is the trust's house, Ada corrected. Administered by the trustee your grandmother chose. That trustee is sitting at this table. Derek turned on me. You're going to destroy this family. I kept my voice at exactly the volume I'd practiced for 9 days. Conversational, steady. The volume my grandmother used across a counter when she handed someone a record they couldn't argue with. You tried to sell an 81-year-old woman's house, I said, while she sat alone at her own birthday table, eating cake with her hands because nobody came. You put a pen in her hand in a hospital bed. You lied to this office about a trust that was never dissolved, and you're telling me that I'm the one destroying this family. His mouth opened, closed. My mother was crying now, the loud kind. After everything I've done for this family, and then my father stood up. He had not said one word since he'd entered the room. He stood, and he didn't look at my mother or my brother. He looked at Gail Brunner, and his voice shook, but he got it out. The report, he said, 6 weeks ago. The anonymous one to the county about Derek and the checkbook. He swallowed. That was me. I called from the truck. I didn't leave my name because he looked for 1 second at his wife. Because I was a coward, but I called. I wanted somebody to stop it. I wanted somebody to stop me. The room went absolutely still. My mother stared at him as though she'd never seen him before. Mom moved the house 12 years ago in her own mind, he said, quieter now to me. Not the deed herself. She gave it to whoever would actually keep it. I knew. I've known for a year. She told me at Christmas I put it where Tess can find it. I just didn't have his voice gave out. He sat back down and he put his shaking hands flat on the table and he didn't say anything else. Paul Henning closed his portfolio. I think we're done here, he said, and he nodded to Gail and walked out. Sherry Dunmore was already gathering her papers, not meeting anyone's eyes. Ada spoke once more into the quiet. For the record, an Adult Protective Services investigation into the financial exploitation of Hazel Lindgren is active. The September power of attorney will be formally challenged in probate. Any further attempt to sell, list, or encumber trust property without the trustee's authorization will be handled as a legal matter. My mother stopped crying all at once. The tears stayed on her cheeks, but the thing underneath them changed from grief into something flat and cold. You'll regret this, she said to me. When your brother loses everything, when this family falls apart, you'll know you did it. I stood. I put the folder in my bag. I looked at my mother, the cashmere, the pearls, the tears she'd learned to use like weather. You don't get to decide what she's worth, I said. Then I turned to Gail Brunner. Thank you for your professionalism. Thank her, Gail said, nodding at the folder in my bag. She did the hard part 11 months ago. I've been doing this 22 years. I have never seen anyone close that door before it opened. She almost smiled. Register of Deeds, of course she was. I walked out of conference room B. Ada followed. Caleb held the door. The November air came off the river cold and clean, and I stood on the sidewalk a full 10 seconds before I remembered to breathe. Here is what happened after. Derek's balloon payment came due 8 weeks later, right on schedule, and he missed it. The bank began foreclosure on 3 half-finished townhomes and a commercial lot by the river. Lindgren Build Group filed Chapter 7 in February. He sold the black Audi. Last, I heard he was a project manager at someone else's firm, making a third of what he used to, and he has never once called to say he was sorry. My mother's standing in Stillwater did not collapse all at once. Reputations in small river towns erode slow, but it eroded. The story moved the way stories move. Great Aunt Margit talked. Gail Brunner's file said what it said. The Bridge Club thread where my mother had posted, grateful, at the lake, went quiet around her. She left the preservation board in the spring. She and my father sold the big house and moved into a condo across the river in Hudson. The September power of attorney was formally voided over 2 uncontested probate hearings. The court appointed me Hazel's legal guardian and confirmed me as permanent trustee. APS substantiated the complaint, and the anonymous report from 6 weeks before mine, the one with no name on it, went into the file beside my father's name, finally, because at the closing table he'd said it out loud. He emailed me once, in March. 3 lines. I should have stood up sooner. I made the call, but I hid. I'm sorry. I read it twice. I didn't answer right away. Some apologies arrived too late to be anything but a record of what a person already knew he should have done. But I kept it. I'm an archivist. I keep the record even when it's the record of someone failing. Especially then, I deferred the things I'd been planning for myself. I took a leave from the History Center. I moved into the back bedroom at 9 Cutler Bluff, the one with the water stain shaped like Lake Superior, and I became the person who made sure Hazel Lindgren ate her dinner and took her pills and sat on the porch in the late light when the prism threw rainbows across the floor. It was not the career step I'd mapped out. It was the right one. Oak cabinet still stands in the front room. I went through all 40 years of her private index, page by page, in cotton gloves, the way she taught me. Every important paper this family ever made, cross-referenced in her own hand. On the last card, dated the same week she went to see Ada, she'd written 1 line for whoever came looking. They will say I didn't know what I was doing. I knew. I always knew. Tess will find this, because Tess reads to the bottom of the page. Keep the table green and the record straight. On a Tuesday in April, I baked a cake. Vanilla, cream cheese frosting, nothing fancy, and set it on the table from her mother's house, the one I'd promised would stay. She came in with her crossword. Whose birthday? Nobody's, I said. It's Tuesday. We're having cake because it's Tuesday. She took a bite and closed her eyes. This is my recipe, she said. Don't change it. We ate in the kitchen with the afternoon light striping the floor and the little rainbows moving across the green cabinets. I want to tell you something, because my grandmother spent 38 years teaching a whole county the only thing that turned out to matter in the end. Honoring the people who truly loved you does not mean obeying the people who only used you. A house can change hands in a single afternoon, with a smile and a cashier's check, and a closing date circled in red. But a record made in a sound mind, signed where it belongs, and filed where the right person will find it, outlives everyone who ever tries to bury it. Memory fades. The record keeps. And sometimes the quietest love in a family is the only thing still keeping watch. That's my story. 1 empty birthday, 1 sealed folder, and a grandmother who remembered first, and remembered for all of us, by writing it down while she still could. If this made you think of a directive, a deed, a will, a conversation you've been meaning to have it today, while the window is open. Write it down so the next one can find it. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one, here at Suspense Calm Stories.